It was supposed to be an ordinary Monday morning at the towering glass headquarters of Silvergate Industries. This company prided itself on innovation and integrity, but behind those spotless floors, something ugly was about to unfold. Henry, a 68-year-old black janitor who had spent 2 decades cleaning those halls, made a small mistake, one that would spark a storm the company never saw coming. No one expected that a single moment of cruelty, caught on camera, would bring down an empire overnight. What happens when arrogance meets justice? Watch until the end. Wait a second. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Henry Thompson had worked at Silvergate for 21 years. He wasn't rich, but he was respected by most. The quiet man who hummed old jazz tunes as he mopped the marble floors before sunrise. He wore the same faded blue uniform and carried an old lunchbox with his late wife's initials etched into the side. For Henry, work was more than a paycheck. It was pride. That morning, the office buzzed with preparations for a major investor visit. Everyone was on edge, especially CEO Charles Whitmore, a man known for his temper and towering ego. The staff whispered about how much was at stake. A $300 million government contract could expand the company overnight. But Henry wasn't thinking about money. He was thinking about finishing his rounds before the executives arrived. He had no idea that one misplaced bucket would soon make him the center of national attention. As the sun climbed higher, the executive floor gleamed. Henry carefully mopped the hallway outside the conference room. He had just finished polishing the brass nameplate that read Charles Whitmore, CEO, when he heard hurried footsteps behind him. Charles stormed out, barking orders into his phone as his custom Italian shoes clicked against the floor. "If this deal doesn't close today, heads will roll," he snapped, slamming the phone down. He didn't see Henry's mop leaning against the doorframe until it was too late. The CEO's $1,000 suit brushed the wet floor, leaving a faint watermark. Charles turned, fury in his eyes. "What the hell is this?" Henry opened his mouth to apologize, but before he could speak, Charles slapped him. The sound echoed through the hallway like a gunshot. Papers dropped. Gasps filled the air. Henry stumbled back, his eyes wide, one hand clutching his cheek. For a moment, no one moved. A young intern, frozen near the elevator, quietly pressed record on her phone. Charles sneered. "Maybe now you'll learn to stay out of my way." Henry said nothing. He picked up his mop, his hands trembling. The janitor's silence spoke louder than any words could. Within hours, the video would surface online, first on a small employee forum, then across every social platform imaginable. By the next morning, Silvergate Industries wasn't known for its innovation anymore. It was known for its CEO. The video went viral overnight, spreading under the caption, "Power Meets Prejudice." Millions watched as the wealthy white CEO struck the elderly black janitor without a word of defense. Protests began outside the headquarters before sunrise. Employees refused to enter the building. Major news outlets replayed the footage in loops, questioning the company's ethics. At 9 a.m., Henry arrived to return his uniform, only to find reporters waiting for him. Someone asked, "Do you forgive him?" Henry paused, eyes heavy with years of quiet endurance. "I don't hate him," he said softly, "but I do hope he learns what respect really means." That afternoon, the government terminated Silvergate's $300 million contract, citing ethical misconduct. The fall of Silvergate was swift. Stockholders fled, partners withdrew, and Charles Whitmore resigned within a week. He tried to issue a public apology, but the world had already made up its mind. Meanwhile, Henry became a symbol of quiet dignity in the face of injustice. Communities raised funds for him, and a local news station covered his story, calling it "The Janitor Who Brought Down a Giant." He didn't seek fame or revenge, only peace. "Maybe," he told the reporter, "this will remind people that respect isn't about titles. It's about how we treat one another when no one's watching." Months later, a new company offered Henry a job, not as a janitor, but as a community advisor. Because sometimes, justice doesn't shout, it echoes. "Where are you watching from?" After the video spread, online outrage turned into organized action. Thousands of comments poured in demanding accountability. Hashtags like "Justice for Henry" and "End Workplace Racism" began trending worldwide. Former employees of Silvergate shared their own stories: subtle discrimination, quiet firings, microaggressions they'd been too afraid to report. Within 48 hours, the company's social media accounts were overwhelmed. Sponsors pulled out. The board of directors scrambled to contain the fallout. But it was too late. The internet had chosen its symbol: an older man in a faded blue uniform standing quietly after being humiliated by power. Henry's neighbors recognized him on the news. They visited his small apartment with home-cooked meals and words of comfort. He was overwhelmed. "I didn't mean for all this," he told a local journalist. "I just wanted to finish my shift." When reporters asked why he didn't fight back, Henry said, "Because fighting back isn't always with your fists. Sometimes life fights for you." Meanwhile, Charles Whitmore's world began to collapse. Overnight, his name became synonymous with arrogance and cruelty. A longtime investor withdrew publicly, saying, "No amount of profit justifies prejudice." The government contract, Silvergate's lifeline, was revoked under the Ethical Workplace Compliance Act. The blow was catastrophic. Within days, Silvergate's value plummeted. Offices across the country shut down. Charles attempted damage control with a televised apology, standing stiffly in front of the company logo. "My actions were regrettable," he said, his voice hollow. "I've learned from this experience." But the audience wasn't moved. The world had seen too many apologies without change. Henry, on the other hand, received a different kind of attention. Civil rights groups invited him to speak at events. Universities wanted him to share his story, but he declined most offers. "I'm not a hero," he told them. "I'm just a man who did his job." One afternoon, a letter arrived at Henry's apartment. It was handwritten, the ink shaky. It came from Charles. "Henry, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say, I've been humbled. I see now how blind I was. You didn't deserve what I did. No one does. I hope you can find it in your heart to wish me peace, even if I never earn it." Henry folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his lunchbox beside his wife's old photo. "Maybe," he murmured. "That's a start." Months later, Henry began working for a community outreach organization focused on workplace equality. His job was to train executives on empathy and respect, a poetic twist of fate. One day, as he stood before a group of new managers, he said, "You don't build a great company with numbers. You build it with people. When you forget that, no amount of money can save you." The room was silent. Every eye was on him. Outside, life went on. Streets filled with noise, buildings gleamed as they always had. But for those who had seen that viral video, something had changed. A collective awareness had awakened about how small acts of cruelty can expose the most significant cracks in a system. And in quiet moments, when Henry mopped his new office floor, this time by choice, not obligation, he smiled faintly. Because he knew the truth. Power can silence a voice, but it can't erase dignity. Where are you watching from? Drop your country and city in the comments. Take care.